So hello everyone, good afternoon, and this is Lauren Flores, and I'm here from the Zahn Library, from San Antonio Public Library, and I'm also joined by my colleague Cindy. She is in Discord and she's also in chat, so she will be responding to any questions that you may have. So if you do have a question, just let her know and she will let me know, and then we can answer your question. And she may also be piping up as well with her own comments. But we'd like to welcome you to our webcast, or our stream rather, called 5 in 25. It's Essential News Vocabulary. One of the things, or the thing basically, that we do in this stream is we pick 5 words in the news and we talk about them. So we define them, and then we also talk about the context of the news in which they appeared. And so I'd like to go ahead and pause for a second and let Cindy say hello. Yeah, so we can actually hear you. We can hear you right now. Thank you so much. I'm really looking forward to your insights. And actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to read our 5 terms and then we can get started, because we do have a limited time. We're going to spend about 5 minutes for each term. But the words that we have today for our June edition, we're going to have Juneteenth, which is coming up pretty soon, next week. BOOKTOK, which is a hashtag, and we'll talk about that in a moment. We're also going to talk about the human cloud, biomanufacturing, and disruptive. And so those are our 5 words. And I'm going to go ahead and jump into Juneteenth in a moment, but I wanted to check in with Cindy and see do you have a favorite word of the 5 in our... That sounds awesome. Me too, because I think that it's also been in the news quite a bit. And let me go ahead and pop up the screen. But right now I'm in a resource that we have at the library called Credo Reference, and you can get to it from the library's webpage. It's a database, and if we have a little bit of time, I could definitely show you how to get to this resource. It is excellent. It has a lot of really good content in it, like encyclopedias and dictionaries and things like that, and it's all online. And so I wanted to start here because sometimes when you're looking up words, you are going to be looking in a variety of sources. You're going to want to go to Google, of course, and you'll also want to look at maybe other specialty items like encyclopedias or like medical dictionaries. And Credo Reference is really good to find resources that are published, especially those specialty encyclopedias and dictionaries. And so let me go ahead and do a quick search for Juneteenth so we can find out more about this word and the holiday that's associated with it. And so I'm going to type in Juneteenth. And one of my favorite parts of this particular database is it will give you a little map of the word, and then it'll have other words that are related. So if you're looking up a lot of new vocabulary, you can see the related terms. But we're going to look at the encyclopedia or actually the Columbia Encyclopedia, I think, for our definition. And Juneteenth is really interesting because I would call it kind of local to Texas, because it is based on an event that happened in Galveston, Texas. So what happened was on January 1st, 1863, Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation that freed the enslaved persons in the United States. And so it took a long time, because even though the order was meant to be for the entire part of the United States, even the parts that were basically trying to secede, not everybody knew about the proclamation, especially in the parts that were Confederate controlled for quite a long time. And so finally, the news reached Galveston on June 19th, 1865, and that's what gives the holiday its name. And so I did find some really wonderful pictures that I'm going to show everybody really quickly. And let me get to something really quickly so I can show you what it's going to look like. It'll take me just a moment. And actually I wanted to ask Cindy your opinion, or if you had anything interesting to add. So this is the marker that is in Galveston that commemorates the occasion. That basically is the origin story of Juneteenth. And there's some other interesting pictures that I wanted to share with you as well. We talk about this particular word. And so let me show you an image of the Emancipation Proclamation. This is what it looked like. I think this is a replica, actually. And then also, Juneteenth has been celebrated as a holiday, either formal or informal, for a really long time. And this image right here is from around 1880 from Houston. So it's a really early Juneteenth celebration. Juneteenth has been in the news as well, and I'm going to switch back to our webpage really quickly so we can do some exploring. But it really kind of depends on the state or city that you're in, whether it is a holiday that's an official holiday. And so there is a movement, and if you go to Google, let's go to Google News. And one of the things that we're doing right now is actually something called lateral reading, where we're going to search through other websites to get extra information for our fact checking. But if we type in Juneteenth, you'll see that there's a lot of really great websites, and there is apparently a movement in Congress to make Juneteenth a federal holiday. It doesn't seem to be one yet, but again, depending on the state you're in, I believe it's a state holiday here in Texas, and it may be even a city holiday for certain cities as well. So just in case you want to find out more about it. But this is basically what the word Juneteenth means and just some of the context. And of course, there's a lot of really great information. I would recommend, if you wanted to know more about it, to definitely check out the library's resources. So I'm going to go to the library's homepage, and you could type in Juneteenth. Oh, that's okay, Cindy. I'm actually having to switch with the audio, so you may not hear me briefly. But what I'm doing right now is I'm showing everybody just some of the content that we have in the library about Juneteenth, like books and things like that, in case people want to learn more about the holiday and the stories around the holiday. So we probably do need to move on to our next term, so I'm going to do that really quickly. And this next term is actually BOOKTOK, which is a hashtag. Yeah, that should be where it wants to be. I did not know that. That is really cool. Can you tell me more about that? Because I had no idea. That is really cool. So let me go ahead and I'm going to actually look for BOOKTOK. And I wanted to mention really quickly, BOOKTOK is a hashtag. So what you're going to do is if you're typing for it, it's going to have a hashtag or a pound sign. Some people call this particular symbol that I'm typing the pound sign as well. And BOOKTOK is related to, of course, the very famous, very popular platform called TikTok, which is a platform where you can make short little videos and then you can put hashtags on them, so that way people can find items that are related to topics or people or themes. And BOOKTOK is really cool because it is really focused on books that people love. And so people are starting to make TikTok videos where they talk about their favorite books, and then they use the BOOKTOK hashtag to market. And so it's really something that's become pretty big. You'll see that on the webpage that I'm showing, which is Google. We can search for all of the videos if we wanted to, but it does talk about Barnes & Noble has got a list of the most popular TikTok books coming from BOOKTOK. And if we look at the news, you'll see that it's been really interesting for people that have written books that are older. All of a sudden, authors may get a sudden rush or demand for a book that's older because somebody's featured it in one of their book talks. And so I think this is a really interesting way for people to share their love of books. And I'm really kind of curious to see if anybody who's watching has ever done a book talk TikTok video, or have you done one yet, Cindy? Right, I'm kind of in the same boat. I haven't really done one yet. I think I'm still kind of stuck on the part where I'm trying to find, like a discrete list, because it seems like there's so many that I'm really fond of. So, but I think it's definitely a trend to watch, especially if you are a book lover or very much into reading. But I wanted to stop really quickly and see, are there any questions in the chat so far, Cindy? So what I would like to do then is, I think we should move on to our next topic, which is human cloud. And I'm really curious. This was something that was very, very new to me. I don't think that it's used very much. I mean, have you heard of this one yet or before? So let's go ahead and do a quick search, because it's one of those terms where it's so new that when I tried to look in the dictionary or in Credo, it didn't come out. And so I know that there was a book that was recently published with this title, but the concept seems to be a lot older. And just to get to our search, we're going to type in human cloud. And I think the best way to explain it, and let me get to, there's a really great image from Financial Times that I think explains it. There's really two terms that I would associate with human cloud. One would be freelancer, which is a person who doesn't work for a company. They're really in their own business, and they take jobs or gigs, and they may be longer term jobs or they may be shorter term ones. So that's maybe one part of it. I would say maybe the human part of these two words that we're talking about. And then the second part is the cloud, and that relates to cloud computing. And so when you put those two together, what you have is a description of a place where you can connect with people remotely through cloud computing, and then they're able to get gigs or jobs. And so that seems to be something that is really growing in the economy, especially now. If you look at the image that we're looking at in the article from the Financial Times, it's from 2015. So obviously this word has been around long enough that there's discussion about it, even if it hasn't really been defined officially yet in a dictionary. But if we go to Google News, you'll see that there's some recent articles and news articles about this particular way of sourcing work. And so what do you think about it, Cindy? I mean, I thought it was really fascinating when I learned more about it. Yeah, it sounds like, and again, if we go back to, let me see if I can get to the page where we were, but the Financial Times article that I found had a lot of really good information. They were talking about, apparently there's certain websites like Amazon's Mechanical Turk, where they have, right, and so it's basically places where companies, or I would say businesses, would maybe have certain smaller tasks that they put in for people to kind of take in and do as like a really temporary assignment. And so there's definitely part of that. They mentioned, of course, Mechanical Turk, and then they talk about some other sites as well, like Upwork and Freelancer and People Per Hour, which seem to be some more recent sites. And it sounds like maybe the tasks are I would say, getting more complex, because it sounds like when people would go to Mechanical Turk, it might be really simple stuff like pressing a button or taking a survey. And it looks like the newer sites are looking for different skills. So there would be things like, ad writing and, design work and things like that. So it's really, really interesting, because it sounds like this is something that is really developing, maybe because of the pandemic and maybe for other reasons as well. But that's our basic definition. And they do talk about in Forbes, it looks like the freelance economy is growing. According to Forbes, it's like $2 trillion. So it seems to be kind of a big deal. I was going to ask did you have anything to add, Cindy, or are there any questions? Yeah, that's what it sounds like. And I'm going to do just really quickly freelancer. What I'm doing right now is I'm just demonstrating and just showing everybody. So we were talking about how really this concept is built from 2 different words. And so this is just the Credo search for freelancer. And so if you want to find out more about that word to kind of understand, what that means. And then also I'd mentioned cloud computing, so I'm going to add that. Yeah, it should. Yeah, and if you're watching, there's a little bit of a lag, so don't be alarmed if we seem to be talking from the future. But I am looking right now at cloud computing, because I think that's also really helpful to visualize what the human cloud is and what it does. And again, the content that we have in Credo is really helpful, because they have really technical descriptions and definitions. And so it's basically when you're not relying on physical infrastructure to set up your computer systems. And so they are, in the web. And so what I'd like to do is, if we don't have any questions, I'm going to go ahead and move on to our next term. And I wanted to check and see with you, Cindy, do you have anything else that you'd like to add before we move on? Oh, you're welcome. And I think the next one is also really fascinating, because it's another word or pair of words, because it looks like you can use both of those terms, at least right now. But I was really having a hard time finding a lot of definitions. And so the word is actually biofacturing, though I found content as well mentioning biomanufacturing. And I'm going to pull up Credo really quickly, because I think, and the website as well, so that way we can actually look for a good definition. And this is one of those words, as I mentioned, where it's really kind of early on, and so people don't seem to quite have the, I would say, definition set up for it yet, at least in a lot of the dictionaries that I've seen. And let me go ahead and get that picture out of the way so you can see the website. We're in Credo right now, but I'm going to switch back to Google. And one of the things that I wanted to point out, and again, it's part of lateral searching and doing research and fact checking, if you're not able to find a word or a fact, you can always go to Google, start there, go to Google News, see if you can verify information. And so sometimes you may be using sites like Wikipedia that you wouldn't normally use, because generally, you don't use Wikipedia for things that are scholarly. But if you're looking for something like this, where it's really new and you're trying to do some fact checking really, it's a good place to start. And if you notice, there is a Wikipedia entry for biomanufacturing. So I'm going to look at that really quickly. And I found that this is really helpful because it defines biomanufacturing or biofacturing. It is a type of technology that uses biological systems. So you're using like plants and cells, biomolecules, and you are creating or manufacturing a product. And so it could be things like food or beverages. It could be other stuff as well. And I thought it was really helpful because in the Wikipedia page, they do talk about different products. So for somebody like me, this is really the first time that I'm encountering this word, and I don't really understand what the definition means necessarily either. And so this is great because it shows you some examples. Like in medicine, there would be things like amino acids, biopharmaceuticals, fusion proteins, things like that. You'll see the examples for food and beverage. They also talk about industrial applications. So I've never seen a biocementation or bioremediation, but if I was doing more exploring with the vocabulary, I would definitely click on those links and find out more about those terms. And then it talks about the ways that the manufacturing works, and so the types of things that they're doing, which is also really helpful. And then if we go to Google News, it's really helpful as well because you'll see that there's different recent articles that talk more about just the, I would say, political and social implications of biomanufacturing, maybe even the impact on society. You'll see that they're talking about biomanufacturing booming, so FDA is trying to streamline their inspection backlog. So it's a lot of really interesting things that are related to this term. And I wanted to stop for a second and see if we had any questions and kind of see what you think, Cindy. Yeah, my understanding is it's like when you use like biological materials like cells and things like that. And I think if we go back to the Wikipedia page, because it does have the list of products and the unit operations. So, you know, they're talking about the different processes that happen. So they're using, you know, things like, you know, cells and blood plasma and things like that. And they're using them to create other things. So they're using them to create pharmaceuticals and growth factors and vaccines and things like that. So it's really, it's a lot for me to wrap my head around. I don't know about you, but this is definitely something that I definitely want to go back and read more about. And I think it's going to be helpful as well to read the news articles, because that will help put all of this into context and help explain, probably even in more detail, the different processes that happen in the materials that they're using. So just to double check, we don't have any questions or anything so far. Okay, so I think what I'm going to do then is I'm going to go ahead and leave this fascinating pair of terms behind, and we're going to go to our last term, which is disruptive. And so let me get that set up for us. And I do have disruptive, but then I do also have disruptive technology, and I did that on purpose because I really feel like when we talk about disruptive, it's something that we use in a lot of different ways and formats. And so let me get to Merriam-Webster. And let's do disruptive. And it's interesting because disruptive, if you're looking at the language really specifically, the word itself is an adjective. So it's coming from the word disrupt. And so if we want to go back and actually look at the word disrupt, which is a verb, to get a sense for the different meanings. It could mean to break apart, which is something that I wasn't aware of before I looked at the dictionary. It's also to throw into disorder, which is something that I was more familiar with. It can also mean to interrupt the normal course or unity of something. And then what we're looking at with this particular, I would say, episode of 5 and 25 is the way that business and technology kind of combine, and it disrupts the way that we do things. And so you'll see that they define disrupt or disruption or disruptive in terms of businesses is basically to cause an upheaval. And if we go to Credo reference, which it looks like I might have accidentally navigated away from it, so let me go ahead and do that really fast. And it's pretty helpful anyway, so that way everybody can see how we're going to get to that particular database. You would go to the library's website and you would click on databases, and then you go to the letter C and you get to Credo. And I'm going to type in disruptive.